All right, this is the scene overnight. Another attempt on the part of SpaceX. This time, we've done something like this since 1975.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Investing Guide. The competition between space companies has heated up in recent years as more and more companies are looking to the stars and are seriously starting to consider the future for the human race. In this video, we're going to show you how one company stands above the rest and gives the government space agency NASA a quite literal run for its money. The company that NASA works most closely with is none other than Elon Musk's SpaceX. As of today, SpaceX transports about 2/3 of NASA's payloads, both cargo and astronauts, and for almost 1/8 of the price than what NASA is doing it for. So how did SpaceX achieve such an amazing feat? It's widely considered that SpaceX is leading the pack in the billionaire space race. SpaceX prides itself on efficient and cost-effective space travel and future space travel. But although the private industry will always have more funding and more rapid advancements relative to their governmental counterparts, we all owe a great deal to the true pioneers of space voyage, NASA. Stick with us to the final moments of this video, as you'll be surprised at some of the absolutely incredible announcements that SpaceX has recently made, especially in comparison to NASA. You'd be quite surprised to hear some of the numbers they're quoting and what that would mean for an investor. For countless years, since man seriously started considering space exploration, the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, NASA, had been forerunners and trailblazers in all space-related technologies and developments. However, the prestigious Space Administration has fallen on some very hard times as of late. Keep in mind, the golden years of NASA so far were during the early days of the Cold War between the two superpowers. And it was that universal dominance over Russia that allowed NASA and the American people to rally together and make those truly incredible leaps for mankind. Unfortunately, the motivation and fuel behind the space race has long since faded away, and most see space exploration as somewhat unnecessary, but more importantly, a huge waste of taxpayer money and governmental resources. Although this opinion is definitely not shared by all. Every yearly budget saw NASA being allocated fewer funds. Eventually, the US Space Agency was forced to fund private companies to not only deliver payloads to the International Space Station, but also astronauts. That's right, the company chosen to help was SpaceX. We've reached a point where governmental space agencies are so far behind their privately funded counterparts, both financially and technologically. Here is a simple comparison that'll highlight our claim. NASA has roughly undertaken 138 shuttle launches, spending $209 billion US. Some simple maths leaves us at $1.6 billion per launch, as opposed to SpaceX reporting a launching cost of only $209 million per launch. This leaves us at SpaceX launching into space at almost 1/8 of the price that NASA launches at. It was only inevitable that a company like SpaceX would partially take up this mantle. Of course, NASA will always have the influence and authorization as a governmental agency that a private agency would never be able to attain. There are some things that money just can't buy. However, we need to first ask the question: how is SpaceX, a 2002 startup, able to achieve this unparalleled cost efficiency? I mean, they operate with a considerably smaller budget, less timely experience, less influence, less authorization, yet are able to maintain the absolute lowest costs while still providing absolute quality and service of the highest class. You see, NASA spaceships were unnecessarily complex. The engineers and the scientists at NASA had little foresight whatsoever, and something like maintenance cost was never even a consideration, as their main aim was pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Elon Musk famously highlighted this difference in agencies. Is a Ferrari better than a Ford, a BMW, or a Benz? It is clear to see that the advanced technology and design that went into creating a Ferrari is still comparable to the others in the fact that they are still capable of doing all of the same trips. The difference further extends into SpaceX's design ethos and business model, which chooses to focus on cost efficiency as opposed to high-tech designs, whilst making sure a high safety level was also achieved. This has left SpaceX in the remarkably advantageous position of being able to offer the absolute cheapest space travel options. Not only cheaper than NASA's forecasted costs, but also the respective Chinese and Russian governmental agencies, and even Boeing. Reports came out about flight costs, and they seem to put SpaceX ahead above the rest. Boeing's fleet of Starline ships will cost NASA around $90 million, in comparison to the $55 million Dragon ships that SpaceX is offering. This 66% of $35 million price difference is remarkable, to say the least. Previously, NASA had an agreement with Russia, and was being charged $86 million per shuttle flight. But SpaceX aims to further reduce their relatively non-existent price tag of $55 million to as low as $2 million per launch. Yes, don't worry, you heard that right. $2 million per launch. Around a decade ago, a number as low as that would have been ridiculous to even consider. But here we are, on the precipice of that now becoming a reality. NASA also didn't stick with its deadline. The company was originally only meant to be making rockets for about 15 years. However, due to putting in more than $1 billion into the International Space Station, 30 years on, the company still continues as a shadow of their former self, trying to finish off working on the space station, needing SpaceX to help as they don't have the means anymore to work with the kind of money they once had, due to the US people and politicians dictating the spending of the company. How did SpaceX act? 1. SpaceX succeeded due to their smaller goals. They started small and didn't reach for the stars as much as NASA. Their first goal was to just make rockets that could transport people and goods to the space station and back. As years went on, their plans and goals widened, but they only took on short-term goals each time before moving to the next with a cost-efficient mindset each step of the way, when looking at overhead and operational costs. The relatively small team of around 1,500 and the power-hungry mentality due to its lack of public funding, combined with their cost-efficient design philosophy, has not only kept the company afloat, but also helped it excel. Number 2. Competition. The US versus Russia space race brought some pretty incredible feats from both Russia and America at the time. While the US looked up to Neil Armstrong as their capable man to lead them to space, Russia had their own man, Yuri Gagarin. The competition saw the US pump billions into the race, but the lack of care for things like maintenance is where SpaceX is different. SpaceX started on a very small budget and to this day has to watch it carefully to not go bankrupt. SpaceX then built its ships with this in mind. So you see, SpaceX primed itself perfectly next to the dying star that was NASA, not rising as a competitor or rival, but rather as a partner to provide a valuable service and product. As a contractor, Musk and SpaceX were able to offer cheaper flights to NASA and helped the government agency reduce its budget, keeping itself in business as opposed to the massively privately funded Blue Origin, and making a tidy profit on the side. SpaceX is still a privately funded company, and although it has all of these incredible plans and well-paying contracts and agreements, the company still rests on a very tenuous and risky financial line that could easily collapse at any time. As of today, SpaceX transport about 2/3 of NASA's payloads, both cargo and astronauts, with safety being of utmost concern and cost efficiency coming as a close second. The other short-term funding strategy of SpaceX relates to its aim of providing low-cost global satellite-based internet in the form of its Starlink project. Aimed at a global consumer base, the profits from both NASA and this side venture are all geared towards SpaceX's final goal, Mars. But unfortunately, that's a video for another time. Upon its conception, NASA only aimed to run for around 15 years at most. However, the agency has endured and managed to venture into all aspects of space, the galaxy and the universe. Sure, in modern days, it might be taking a back seat, especially in the face of all these better funded and unbelievably high-tech private companies. But its contribution to humanity and the human race will persist till the end of time, as we shall never forget who took us to the moon, as we all look forward and eagerly wait to see who will take us further. While you're here, go ahead and click on